Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. And Shane, we are less than, 3 weeks away from college football from Arizona. The number 21 ranked team in the country is starting their season. Can you believe it?
I can, yes and no. It doesn't seem that long ago that you, me, and my nephew Zach were sitting on in our living room watching Arizona rally in the Alamo Bowl. We all were standing up going crazy when Gunnar Maldonado returned I guess a fumble for a touchdown. But no, it's kind of surreal that so much has happened just since then, not just in the offseason in terms of, just in the last few months, but we had a new head coach, a new athletic director, a new president, Arizona president, which I know we're going to talk about. So, and then of course, a new conference as well, by the way. So it feels like a new era in some ways, and in others it just feels like back to the old grind. But Arizona enters the season with the nation's second longest winning streak, and hopefully they'll retain it for at least 2 weeks going into the season, and then we'll have to see what happens after that.
Yeah, let's start 1 week at a time. Let's just not get too far ahead of ourselves. Now, next week on the show, we will make all of our season predictions. I know that we have been called lazy for our mid-July predictions of the Big 12. We're not Phil Steele here, but we're going to do some homework. We're going to, at least I am. I know you've already done yours, but I'm going to do more homework, and I will have more game-by-game thoughts on win-loss for Arizona, just what I think is going to happen. Not lazy. I thought
can't please everyone. If you pick Arizona to win every game, you're a front runner. If you pick them to go 500, you're a pessimist, Debbie Downer, and you try to. What was it?
I'm not picking it.
Yeah. What was it that the Wayne's Mike Myers said in Wayne's World? They said Led Zeppelin didn't make tunes everyone loved. They left that to the Bee Gees. Well, I think we're more Led Zeppelin than the Bee Gees for multiple fronts. So I think that's a horrible analogy, but I'm going to roll with it. And I think that if we try to please everyone, we're not going to please anyone.
You know what? Arizona is not going to go 12-0 as far as I see it.
How dare you?
I will gladly be wrong. I don't think they're going to go 11-1 either. 10-2, maybe best case scenario. We'll talk about that next week. All right. It is time for buy or sell. We have an interesting show. We're not going to do at the end of the show this week. We're not going to do our thoughts on a particular year. We've covered that, done that like 12 times. So we're going to talk about some other topics in college football. The great Brian Jeffries is going to join us in segment number 2. But first, it is buy or sell, presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Go to iceshaker.com. Use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, and get $5 off your first Ice Shaker purchase. And then from there, once you get a post-purchase survey, please fill it out. Mention Wildcat Country and mention Shane, myself, either or, and we will be very grateful for that. Yes. All right, it is time for buy or sell. And number 1 this week, Shane, it's a good question here. We should feel better, or a good statement, should feel better about long-term success for our football program now that Arizona is in a conference without blue bloods, aka USC, Oregon, etc. Buy or sell?
I might sell that. I would say not necessarily. I do concede your point that the conference certainly seems more wide open than the Pac-12 did last year and even before that. I would still prefer that the Pac-12 existed as it had if I could wave a magic wand. However, this is the reality. We got to roll with it. And this does present Arizona with an opportunity, I think, to rebrand itself in terms of its football program. You're in a new conference, new head coach and staff, and your team on the rise. The longest winning streak in the country outside of the defending national champions. From that perspective, I think it's a perfect time to rebrand or sort of reintroduce Arizona football, which is not a historically dominant football program, but has had its moments, enters the season riding a 7-game winning streak and ranked in the top 25. I was on a Texas Tech podcast yesterday, Eric, sort of breaking down this year's team. Yeah. And I had a chance to go over some of the traditions that our program has, that the school has, including the origin of the Bear Down motto, which I'm guessing fans of most Big 12 teams don't know. So, who knows how conference realignment is ultimately going to shake out, but this does present an opportunity for a team that was on a 20-game losing streak 2 years ago to wipe the slate clean, present itself as a team to be feared in a new conference, potentially. And for recruiting purposes, I'm more excited about that in terms of Arizona's long long-term success versus the non-blue blood factor, if that makes sense.
You know what? As far as I'm concerned, this is a slam dunk bye. I
Okay.
mean, this Big 12 conference, Arizona year in, year out, should be able to compete with any of these schools. There's nobody here, and we'll ask Brian about this a little bit later on. There's nobody here in this conference that really stands out and you're like, this team is guaranteed going to out recruit Arizona every year, like USC and Oregon and Washington, etc. Where you don't
Yeah.
really have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
nobody on paper. These teams are going to spike. We know that. We know, Kansas has had big years. Oklahoma State's had big years. TCU was in the national championship game the other year. Central Florida went undefeated the other year. I mean, I get that, but there's nobody year in, year out where I'm like, Arizona is a notch below this team. They're on par. And same with Utah. I mean, Utah, obviously, once Whittingham leaves, who knows what Morgan Scalley is going to do as his replacement, whenever that is.
Yeah.
I expect Arizona, if I believe they can keep a level of success to where they are more likely to have a winning record many more years than they've had in the Pac-12.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think Arizona was like ninth out of all 12 teams in Pac-12 record during the Pac-12 era specifically, not the Pac-10, but the Pac-12 era. So it's a chance for a fresh start. It's just it takes a while to change the perception of a program in any
Sure.
sport. And having one or two good seasons, that's nice. But then it's like, oh yeah, I remember they were good a few years ago. Versus as soon as you think of them, like what Dabo Swinney's been able to do at Clemson, albeit not last year, but he's really now when you think of Clemson, you don't necessarily think, oh, they're a decent ACC team. You think they're perennial call a championship contender. I know that's fallen off a little bit maybe the last year or so, but you get my point. It takes years to get there. I'm not saying Arizona is going to reach that kind of level, but I think with that, the stars are potentially aligned very well for Arizona with a fresh start and a very good team to reintroduce itself to the country and have a new perception that this is a Big 12 team to be feared, and having success in the first year could be a big part of that ultimately.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay. Speaking of success, number 2, Shane, On3 Sports put out a list of Davey O'Brien Award watch list notable QBs. You tweeted this out, and Noah Fifita was not one of them. Is this a glaring omission or too small of a sample size? Not really a buy or sell, but a question here. Glaring omission,
there's
too
what,
small of a sample size.
There's what, 20 quarterbacks on the watch list, and they put out 10 notables, and of course Shedeur Sanders was on there along with some others. So I mean, I kind of made an issue out of it on X, even though I don't think it's that big a deal. But I do think it's notable that Noah Fifita, who was on that watch list, and I don't put my stock in the watch list. I don't care that much because it's like, congratulations, you haven't done anything yet this year. But it's cool that he is at least recognized as a very good quarterback and someone who could potentially have a very good season to follow up last year. But I do think it's interesting that the quarterback of one of the best teams in the country last year, at least the second half of last year, riding a long winning streak, doesn't get mentioned in there. So, if nothing else, it's a little bulletin board material. I don't know if that matters to Noah Fifita that much, and I don't know if he's that kind of guy, but it certainly can help. And it's when you consider that, plus the fact that Arizona dropped of all the ranked teams in the new AP poll, Arizona's number 21, just like they were in the coaches poll. Of all the ranked teams as of now, Arizona fell more spots than any other team currently ranked in the top 25. Maybe you start, getting that chip on your shoulder. It's like people don't believe in us. They think since Jed left, we're washed up. We're not going anywhere. So maybe you use that as a little bit of fodder. So I think Fifita probably should have cracked like the top half of that notable list for that reason. But I like to make a big deal out of things just to see what kind of reaction we're going to get, and it was a fun reaction, no doubt.
All right. I'm gonna say probably too small of a sample size. Mostly, maybe 60%. The 40% of glaring omission. Graham Mertz should not be on that list. The only reason he is because he plays at an SEC school and is a senior. But I think Noah Fifita is a better quarterback. My opinion. But these ASU fans, you referenced it, Shane, that reply to your tweets. There was one tweet that you put out last week, and you had a response, and I couldn't find it again before as I was researching for this show that I almost responded to at the time because they're so obnoxious. And I mean, just how, at least for me, how do you tolerate some, like, there's no way I could just let it go. I would be
Yeah.
going at, and I guess you shouldn't, go at it with, somebody who's not very smart. However, how do you do it?
Well, just a little bit of background. When I created my Twitter handle, originally it was I the first handle I was actually at Territorial Cup is what it was. And I think someone I
Okay.
ditched that and someone else took it because that was around the time that I had my first book out about the Territorial Cup rivalry, and so there are a lot of ASU and UVA fans that followed me, and I did write what I believe is a very unbiased book, and a lot of ASU fans have said as much, and I appreciate that. So over the years, obviously, I changed my handle to Shane Dale ABC 15 because I worked there for a few years, and then I left, and so now it's just at Shane Dale AZ. But there are still some ASU fans that follow me, which I appreciate. But I feel like at this point, since I'm all in on this U of A podcast and don't talk much ASU anymore because I don't work in the ABC affiliate in Phoenix, and I don't really promote the book much anymore, except like I did just now. There are some ASU fans that still follow me, whether I don't know because it's if you call it like a hate follow or whatever, or some that just want to get the other perspective. But then I kind of, I look at the people who complain, the Asian fans who complain and are trying to, get slam me or whatever, and I see that they follow me, and it's kind of interesting. So like, you could unfollow me if you want to, but it's not a big deal. And I try to remember that a lot of ASU fans bought my book too, and I'm not. But like you've talked about a bunch of times, I'm not the ASU hater that I know that you love to be. So it doesn't bother me as much. But I like going back and forth with them too.
You know what I like? I like when people use facts.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of debates are theoretical, and I understand that. Including, when it comes to stuff we talk about on the show as far as Arizona. When it comes to actual facts, if I say something and it's wrong statistically, that's a fact that I missed on. A
Yep.
lot of these responses to your tweets are not intelligent because they're not dealing with facts. You're dealing, like, if you look at the numbers, Arizona has beaten Arizona State more times in football historically.
Yeah.
Arizona had all five of its biggest teams make the postseason last year. ASU went 0 out of 5, and not including hockey, which Arizona does not have as a Division I sport.
Wish they did. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, those are facts. People saying Noah Fifita is the next Khalil Tate, but they're not the same type of player.
I know that was fun.
So that's not even a factual.
Yeah.
Can't even go there.
But well, I mean, without random takes like that, then Twitter/X wouldn't be Twitter/X. That's what makes it fun. But yeah, but what I love about this football rivalry, and this is probably the last thing I'll say about it, is that it is so even, and both schools or both fans of both schools will make their case. Like you pointed out, Arizona leads the all-time rivalry. ASU fans will come back at, well, since Arizona State became a university, ASU leads the all-time rivalry. Then Arizona fans can come back and say, well, in the Pac-10-12 era, Arizona won that, and then it comes back to who won the most recent game, which is in Arizona's favor too. So it goes back and forth, and I feel like if it wouldn't really be as much of a like ASU U of A in basketball. I barely consider that a rivalry, even though we know it is, and we know you hate to lose to ASU. I consider UCLA a bigger rival in basketball because Arizona has been so dominant. But in football, it's been pretty even over the years and over the decades, and both schools have bragging rights here and there. We have last year's win, ASU has 70-7. So there's a lot of back and forth there, and that's, I think, what makes the rivalry a lot of fun. And I respect other people's takes. The Khalil Tate Noah Fifita comparison, not so much, but if you want to mix it up otherwise, I'm okay with that.
I respect a take when it's a solid, intelligent take.
Mhm.
Somebody wants to say ASU has beaten Arizona, 10 to the last 15 times in football or whatever it is.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's that many, but like
That sounds about right.
that's
Yeah.
that's a respectable take. It's
Mhm.
like, or 12 out of 20. Okay, that's like it's a statement. But to say, U of A sucks because Nova Fafita is going to stink. Well, why? When he played last year, he lost one game as a starter.
Yeah, well, what do
So
you expect from social media, though? I mean, that's how it's been since the beginning, right?
bunch of idiots that reply to some of your tweets. I'm just saying that. Okay. Number three, I guess I'm going to make this more simple than I have it written down here. Suresh Garamella, Arizona's new president. Buy or sell from a sports perspective?
Uh, I I don't want to cop out, but I got to hold for now because I just don't
That's
know enough.
fair.
I know he comes from Vermont, and I think the first thought that a lot of Arizona sports fans thought is, well, going from the Catamounts to, I think it's the Vermont Catamounts, right?
Yeah.
To the Arizona Wildcats, it's a bit different perspective there. But just because he doesn't come from a school that's as prominent in the sports world, although Vermont basketball, I think more often than not
Yeah.
makes the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
But obviously on the football side, it's a bit different. But we'll wait and see. All I hope is that we have a president who lets Desiree Reed Francois and the athletic department do what they need to do.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. I don't necessarily want a repeat of Dr. Robbins, even though I appreciate we have a president who's passionate about sports, but we've seen the negative side of that as well. But I think as long as he respects it and says, "Hey, look, uh, Desiree, you do what you need to do. You have my support." I think that's all you need from a school president, as opposed to one who was going to look to cut sports here and there, which I don't. It will. I'm willing to give the man a shot, and then I think that's the appropriate thing to do at this point.
Yeah, and I think the hold is the right one. It's kind of a loaded question in that we don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
we don't know what kind of president he's going to be, but I agree. If he lets Desiree do her thing in the athletic department, I think Arizona will be better off for it.
yeah.
I don't think this is somebody, regardless, I don't expect him to be interviewing head coach candidates and
No.
deciding this is going to be the person. Kind of like Dave Hickey seemed to be like Dr. Robbins' puppet.
Well,
And it does. I
I
don't
don't
think
know if
that's
I'd
going to be
go
the
that.
case
I
this
don't know
time.
if I'd go that far, but I
Yeah.
would say that I just get the feeling that Desiree wouldn't put up with that. She'd be like, "I'm out of here. If you're not gonna let me make those
Yeah.
decisions, I can go somewhere else." Dave didn't necessarily have that kind of leverage. Just my feeling from her is that she's very kind and says all the right things, but I also feel like she's probably got that kind of bulldog mentality behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. And I think having a school president who's going to let her do her thing, hopefully, will be a good combo and maybe a better one than the Robin Siki era.
Okay, that's fair enough. Let's talk about this color guide that
Yeah.
Arizona football posted on Twitter. I kind of have an idea where you're going to go with this. I'm just going to give my take on it first because I'm
Yeah.
sure you're going to rant on it.
Well, and just give the background for people who don't know, because I don't think
So
this is a usual thing that they do, is it?
no, this is the Arizona Athletics posted the other day on August 12th a color guide for football game days home and away.
Yeah.
This is what you should wear. August 31st, a white shirt. And then it goes red for NAU and then at Kansas State, blue at Utah, then a stripe out against Texas Tech. That's fine. I appreciate when they do that. And then they go along, etc. I don't understand the white. I know we've done the whiteout,
Yeah.
the Cal game being, in football, and then
Was
the
that the last
Washington
one?
game. No,
Or was
there's
it the
another
last?
one. There's
Okay.
another one last year. I think that was a whiteout. They try to do like one a year. I just
Okay.
don't know that opening in white, which is your road color in football, it's just kind of strange to me. I'm okay with red or blue. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, I don't care what they wear as long as it's red or blue. Support your team. And I don't care that New Mexico wears red because nobody's gonna who's gonna travel 5,000 fans. Like New Mexico
Yeah.
football is irrelevant at this point. I don't know how I feel about this. Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, I sort of understand it for road games. Someone noted that Utah also wears red, so visiting Arizona fans
Yeah,
wearing
but why do
blue.
you need to tell me what to dress? I'm not going to be at the game. What's the matter?
I,
Is it?
but I'm
Yeah,
saying for like the visiting fans there. I think, I mean, if that's what it's intended for, like I remember at the Holiday Bowl against Nebraska in 2009, and I only stayed for about
yeah,
half of that game.
yeah.
But it was but it was really hard to tell who was rooting for who based on the colors they were wearing. Everyone was wearing red. So I sort of get that. You want to stand out on the road game, and maybe strategically that's that's the thing to do. But I don't get it in terms of proposing a certain color for home games. I get if you want to do a white out or a stripe out, that could be fun. I think that's fine. But from a fan enthusiasm perspective, from a marketing perspective, it doesn't make much sense to me I said the word mandate. It's not a mandate, obviously, but it's a recommendation. Like this is the theme. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like I get wanting to do a whiteout here and there, but to say wear one of your school's colors to one game and then wear the other color to another game, I don't see the point. I don't see the marketing value in that. And then I also thought back to the 2022 Territorial Cup game when they did emphasize the red out and they were wearing blue, and Scooby among other people were questioning, okay, why are we wearing different colors from the fans? But so I don't get the reasoning behind it. Maybe we can get Desiree Reed-Francois, whoever made the decision on the podcast at some point to explain it, but it just kind of came out of the blue. Like, here's what we're doing for each game with no explanation behind it. And I just thought it was kind of odd.
Yeah, it's the road game thing is like, you wear whatever you want. Like, as long as it has an A on it, who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of
I feel the same way. I mean, and most people wear red. Our friend Brett Alice noted that for a long time the common color that people wore the games was blue, and somewhere over time it became red instead, which is interesting. I kind of wonder how and when that started. But typically most Wildcat fans will wear red. If you want to wear something else, I don't care. I just my feeling is that people say, well, being color coordinated makes it look cooler. To me, just feeling the stadium looks cool. I don't care what color you're wearing as long as the stadium's full.
I'm gonna give a little rant here. So I'm wearing a blue Nike shirt if you're watching the YouTube podcast or watching this on YouTube as compared to listening to it. Nike has not made very many red shirts in the last 5 years. It's been mostly blue or white, which is kind of strange. I mean, the newest one that they came out with, I just bought. It's probably not the greatest looking shirt. I'll probably wear it at some point on the show, but it's white with blue, blue collar and a blue like tips on the sleeves. Where's the red? Like, red should be Arizona's main color. Maybe, I mean, Brad's probably onto something here. I don't know. Just the whole thing is strange. I would like to see people in red. I kind of on board with that. And then occasionally blue here or there, the white at home, at least for New Mexico. Like, I guarantee you go into that stadium, there's going to be less than 50% white.
Yeah. Well, and it could be less than 50% full based on what we've seen. Hopefully it'll be close to full for that game, but you never know. But again, I feel
wait.
What?
You don't think that for the enthusiasm of a ranked team and a new coach that we're going to have close to a sellout?
I don't know. Maybe 40,000.
Come on.
You think?
I'll take that bet. I'll take the over on that.
What do you want to? What do you put in the over under at? 45,000.
So capacities
52,
close to 50, 52, 53. I think the announced attendance will be over 47.
Okay,
if not higher.
I hate to be cynical about it, and I hope that you're right, but I'm guessing it's going to be lower than that.
All right, we'll make a bet closer to once we get some more intel on that one. But I mean, I am fairly confident. I might even raise my expectation.
Okay, well, and hopefully you're right. But again, my point is that if that tweet had come with some sort of explanation behind it, maybe it would make sense and it would make this whole discussion moot. But they just sort of put it out there and without much precedent, and we're like, okay. It's one thing to suggest like a theme night, like baseball games do, or obviously, you announce family weekend and homecoming and all that. But this was just like, here's what colors we asking you to wear to each game, and with no explanation behind it. And I think it just left a lot of us scratching our heads.
All right, I want to give you a bonus one. This is not on our itinerary, Shane. So it was announced on Tuesday before we're recording the show that Arizona and UCLA have extended their, officially. They're playing on December 14th in Phoenix. I got my tickets today. They were going to play next year in Las Vegas, and then in 2027 in Los Angeles. So from there, the thing is, it's great. I'm excited to keep this, but also buy or sell. It's kind of a bummer that we're not seeing Arizona UCLA at McHale Center and Pauley Pavilion, that these are only neutral site games. Buy or sell?
I would buy that. I think that would be cooler. I mean, I thought the atmosphere in the game we went to last year when the Arizona played Alabama in Phoenix, I thought that was great. I thought
really good.
It had very much a McHale feel to it, even though it's a bigger arena. But yeah, I think that would be cool. I think that I always enjoy especially whenever UCLA comes to town. Even last year, it feels like it's always a big game, and that whole cliche about throwing the records out, it really does seem to be true. Especially last year when Arizona was very good and UCLA was not, and Arizona had to scratch and claw to come back and win that game after being down 19 points. So it always has that big game feel. Every game at McHale Center feels like an event, but especially that one every year. So it would be cool to keep that tradition going. And then having to go back to Poly the next year, I would love to see. I'd love to see that become an annual thing, back and forth between McHale and Poly. I realize that's not going to happen. But at least we're getting the rivalry continued for 3 of the next 4 years. It'd be awesome if they could lock in 2026 as well. Maybe that's not an option, but I'm glad that at least that rivalry, because I do think it is the best basketball rivalry in the West and has been for over 30 years now. And I'm glad they're going to be able to continue it, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to whip up on UCLA.
Yeah, I don't think Mick Cronin wants any part of playing in the McHale Center again after some recent issues that his players and he's had with fans there. And I guess I get it, but I'm going to buy that. It's kind of a disappointment that they're not doing it. I'm excited. Yeah. Listen, I'll be there. I'm sure you'll be there on December 14th.
It's easier for us to go. We're in the Phoenix area.
Absolutely. No, it's great. And Tommy Lloyd wants to play an annual game up here, so it makes sense. With that said, and Vegas next year makes a ton of sense, kind of in between. Would be a fun little road trip to do. With that said, it's fun to see UCLA at the McHale Center.
Great.
And it's fun to see Arizona at Poly Pavilion. And not seeing that is kind of disappointing.
Yeah,
but
I'd rather have that than not at all. But I'm with you. I agree. Having them having a true home and home would be more fun.
Before we bring on Brian Jeffries, wanted to remind you that Wildcat Country is presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Harrah's Auction is the only Valley casino with Caesars Rewards, the player's card that pays for Vegas and more. In fact, the reward credits you earn with Caesars Rewards can be redeemed for hotel stays, dining, and more at 50 destinations across the country, including Las Vegas, Lake Tahoe, New Orleans, and dozens of others. Sign up, play, and earn Caesars Rewards only at Harrah's Auction Casino. One card, 50 destinations to enjoy your perks. General Manager Mike Kintner will be joining us likely, I believe, next week.
That's right.
Give us his predictions for Arizona football. He'll be in the stands most nights, so he'll give us his thoughts about football, maybe some basketball thoughts, and then what's going on at Harrah's Auction Casino. But first, let's hear from one of the GOATs, Arizona Athletics. That is Brian Jeffries, here on Wildcat Country.
What's up, Wildcat Country? Chris Gronkowski here, and I'm at the Ice Shaker Warehouse, proud sponsor of the Wildcat Country podcast. And I got something new and exciting to show you. We're talking about the 4D printed University of Arizona shaker bottles with the Legacy Championships on it. Check it out now at iceshaker.com.
Shane, one of our favorite guests to have on multiple times a year is the voice of the Wildcats, Brian Jeffries, who, if we were to have a Mount Rushmore of Arizona personalities, I'd say probably in the running, wouldn't you say, Shane? Like, probably up there.
You've only said that about a dozen people, but yeah. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. He likes to flatter people, but no, I agree. Absolutely would be up there.
Brian, we're glad to have you back on. New season about to start. First question is, in terms of enthusiasm, Brent Brennan has brought this, is extended kind of the enthusiasm that Arizona ended the year with last year. How excited are you personally to get going in 2024?
Well, I think a couple things, guys. And, last year ended on a great note, winning the Alamo Bowl, and Arizona's on a 7-game winning streak right now. And so that was a great boost to the offseason. Of course, the coaching change is never easy, no matter how it goes. This was one where, the coach leaves for greener pastures, at least green when it comes to money. And, you bring in a new guy that people were somewhat familiar with here. He was a GA years ago under Dick Tomey, and has been on the West Coast and been in the Pac-10, Pac-12 for a while, and then it's San Jose State. But I'll say this about Brent Brennan. Probably the perfect fit to come in just because of his personality. He and Jed Fish are totally opposite. Jed and I got along great, and a tremendous coach, and you give him all the credit in the world for getting the program turned around. But he ran things kind of like an NFL team, and that's his prerogative. Brent comes in as more of a Dick Tomey kind of guy, where it's a little more, I hate using that cliche players coach, but he's more laid back. He's a lot of fun. The players immediately, found out what kind of guy he was. And I think that was one of the big reasons why so many stayed, is because they wanted to play for him and they wanted to play for each other. So I think the coaching change is as tough it is anytime you go through this. It's probably gone as smoothly as you could ask for. and they had an excellent spring practice, and now they're well into fall. And of course, as they say, the proof in the pudding. So we'll find out here August 31st what it looks like.
Yeah, Brian, thanks again for joining us. And I know without dating you too much, I know you've been through a lot of year ones with new Arizona head football coaches. And I think there's always that challenge of, a new staff gelling with players who were part of the previous regime. And Brent Brennan and his staff have done a great job keeping a lot of those guys, obviously. But what have just in your experiences covering Arizona football, what's been your experience in terms of watching new staff, players year one, and some of the challenges that may come to this, even with great relationships like Brent Brennan has built?
Well, I mean, there's probably a couple things, and it's the same way everywhere. Whenever there's a coaching change, you've got different terminology, different schemes, new playbook. You have new assistant coaches. Now, in Arizona's case, able to keep Chuck Cecil here, and Ricky Hundley is still in a non-coaching role, but on the staff, and Dwayne Aquina, who almost left, and then when Brennan got hired, Aquina decided to stay. Dino Babers, who was an assistant at Arizona some years ago, back. Bobby Wade, former wide receiver at Arizona, back now as a coach. And so I think anytime you've got new guys that you're talking to every day, and I'm talking about your position coaches, there's an adjustment to be made there, because you may have been recruited by the previous staff, and you may feel very comfortable with them. And the new guys come in, and you don't know what to make of them. They probably don't know what to make of you. And so it's that period of time where it's really getting to know one another. And I go back again when Brent got here, one of the first things he did was he wanted to sit down with everybody and get to know them, and he wanted them to know him. And I think that was just a real key. And I'm sure many coaching staffs do that, but in this case, it seemed to be very important, because we are in the era of the transfer portal. And so you can get up and leave now pretty much anytime you want. And that's what coaches face. So getting that relationship started was a real key for keeping so many guys on the roster.
Yeah, Brian, do you think there are any parallels between, because I was thinking back, and I barely remember this era, but I do know that Larry Smith did a great job at Arizona, and then he kind of left overnight to go to USC. And then I'm sure a lot of Arizona fans were bitter about that. But then Dick Tomey comes in and becomes the winningest coach in the history of the program. Do you feel like there are any parallels between that scenario and, Jed Fish building this program up and then handing the keys over to a guy like Brent Brennan, who certainly seems like Dick Tomey more likely to stay long-term if he gets the opportunity?
Yeah, I'd say the difference is that, Jed was only here 3 years. And a lot of fans are bitter about his departure. Not necessarily, or maybe necessary for the reasons, but the fact that he goes from 1 win to 5 wins to 10 wins, and the fans thought they had something going. And I'm not saying it's not going to keep going, but you just felt there was some momentum there. And then all of a sudden, the coach gets up and leaves, and then the fan base, I think. In fact, I was at lunch today, and the restaurant I was at, the owner came out. We were just talking, and he still says that he's mad at Jed Fish because of him leaving. And so I think that it may be a little similar, but I think just different in the fact that it happened so quickly. 3 years seems like almost a blink, and here we are with another new staff. And anytime you change coaches, like I said, not only the players, the fan base has to adjust too. So that's going to be a real key here. And everyone, I say everyone, the fan base seems to have bought in right now, and there is excitement, there is optimism, and now we'll see how it goes. There's so many new things now with the new conference and all that's going on in college athletics. The adjustment period now, it's very short. You never know what's going to happen next.
Brian, in doing those Arizona road shows where I was able to meet you, for example, in May out in Phoenix, just being around Brent Brennan and seeing the enthusiasm that he had and how he interacted with the fans at these different tour stops, just how would you kind of put your finger on how he connects with not only his players, but just alumni and people associated with the program?
Well, I think it's really important. And particularly when you come in your first year, you want to win over everybody, including the fan base. And Arizona's had some good teams over the years, and they've had a good fan base, but they need more fans. and there's no secret there. I mean, that's what it's all about in college athletics. Those football season tickets or football game tickets, that pays the freight for almost every sport on campus. Arizona's an exception because of the men's basketball program, but just the same, you need football to be strong, and that means you need a solid fan base. They need to get 48 to 50,000 people in that stadium every week. That's just the bottom line, and he knows that. And I think that coaches understand that, they're not only a coach, they wear so many hats, and one of them is being a salesman and going out and selling the program. And I think that's one thing Brent realized when he came in, and one thing that he knows that he has to continue. And I'll add this: even though he was hired by Dave Hickey, the former athletic director, it wasn't very long until Dave Hickey was out and Desiree Reed-Francois came in, and Desiree is very much in line to that thinking, and that's why she wanted to do these trips around the state, because you need to get out and touch the fan base. They need to know who they're rooting for and understand the personality and I think the passion that these coaches have for their different sports. And so I think that's and that's right into Brent's alignment. That's into his personality, and it's done nothing but help. And I couldn't believe the crowds, from Phoenix. They were in Glendale. I didn't make that trip, but we went to Yuma, Nogales, Sarita, wrapped it up in Pine Top, which was incredible, the number of people that showed up for that. And it's a rare opportunity when you get a chance to actually shake hands with the head coach. And so it goes a long ways, I think, towards building a successful program.
Yeah, it really was fun to be around not only Brent, but some of the other head coaches, to get a chance to meet Tommy Lloyd as well. And obviously yourself in May. That was really a fun experience. Now, at the risk of sounding cynical, and Shane and I have been accused of this on the show every now and then, we'd like to keep things real. When you go into a season with expectations, especially as an Arizona fan, it almost feels like when it comes to football, you're going to be let down. I mean, you look at 1999, you go out, you're on the cover of Sports Illustrated. You look at 2018, when I was telling Shane before the year, I need to get Rose Bowl tickets, Kevin Sumlin's here, and then things don't go well. Yeah, that wasn't good. Is there something like that you can kind of ease our pain? Like, this is different, or should we just temper our expectations until proven otherwise this season, in your opinion?
Well, let's see, how can I put this? I think I will temper it somewhat, because you just don't know. And I'm the eternal optimist. I don't know if I can ever remember a football season before kickoff, before the kickoff of the first game, when I haven't felt that the Arizona team, had a chance to be good. I didn't know how good, but leaving camp, I always feel that they were ready to play. They had the talent they needed. It just the problem is that the other teams are doing the same thing, and they're ready to play. And maybe they have better players, and maybe they have a stronger program. I think the difference this year is you have a lot of guys back from last season, some really key guys back from last season, a team that won 10 games. You have a coaching staff that I think has meshed extremely well with the players. You have a schedule, your first two games, you should win without any question. And you're going into a conference, and I'm excited about the Big 12, but okay, you guys want to be, upfront about this. The Big 12 does not have USC, Oregon, Washington, although they may be down a little this year, UCLA, Utah. Well, Utah is in the league. So, the recruiting battles against the LA schools in particular, and Oregon, very difficult for anybody else in the Pac-12 to win. And that's why those programs have excelled for so long. And I'm not saying that the Big 12 is any weaker, but, losing Texas and Oklahoma, I just think top to bottom now, there's a lot more balance in the Pac-12. So the optimistic side of me says Arizona has a chance to be really good this year based on their schedule and who they play in the Big 12 this year and their non-conference schedule. But on the other side, you don't know, because you just haven't played these teams before. And so what are you going to get when you go on the road to BYU, to Kansas State, even though that's a non-conference game? You go to Manhattan, Kansas. You go to Central Florida. You go to TCU. Nobody really knows what to expect until we see the product on the field. So I hope I'm giving you both sides of the story there, but that's kind of the way I look at it.
All right, Brian, let's talk about this year's team a little bit, starting with the offense. Some turnover at the so-called skill positions, but they're bringing a lot of talent back, including and a lot of talent coming in at the running back position. Offensive line looked like a very strong position, and maybe still is, but you lose Raymond Polito for the season. What are your overall thoughts on the offense going into this season compared to last year's?
Well, last year you had Jaden Delores, the starting quarterback when the season started. You had Jacob Cowing, one of the top receivers ever to play in an Arizona uniform. You had a three-man backfield in Jonah Coleman, DJ Williams, and Michael Wiley, and you had a solid offensive line. So now things evolved during the season. Of course, Delora gets hurt. Noah Fafita comes in and becomes the story of the season, not only in Arizona football, but the conference and really part of the nation, I think. And so, you fast forward now to this season, and Fafita's back. He should be better than ever. Wide receivers, Tetero McMillan is on his way to an All-American year. Montana Lamonius Craig, the transfer from Colorado, back for his second year. I think you're going to see a lot of Malachi Riley, A.J. Jones, et cetera, at wide receiver. The running back situation, to me, I think is probably one area to keep a close eye on early on. That's tough when you lose the three guys I mentioned. Speedy Luke is back, but he's not an every down running back. So who's going to be that guy? Who are the two guys that are going to be in there, down after down carrying the ball? I think that's one question. You mentioned the loss of Polito, and that hurt. They do have Josh Baker back at center and some other guys that have some experience. So the offensive line, I think, should be okay. And they lost a great tight end. I do mean a great tight end, Tanner McLaughlin. I saw him in a Bengals uniform here the last couple of days in a preseason NFL game. And I tell you what, that kid was something else. But Kean Burnett, the son of Chester, I think is going to emerge this year. And they've got a couple other guys in Tyler Powell and Roberto Miranda, I think, can do some good things there. So I think the offense, I would be shocked if there's really a drop back there. But I'll put an asterisk there. Let's see how the running game goes. I think that's going to be one thing we're going to have to keep a close eye early on. And I'll just add to that, and it goes for both sides of the ball, the transfer portal changes a lot of things. There's so many new guys on the roster, including running backs, but we haven't seen them play in an Arizona uniform yet. So those guys, they're going to have to step up because that's going to be very important for the ultimate success of the team.
I got two more questions for you, Brian. Kind of the same question on the defensive side of the ball, and kind of the same thing. They bring back a lot of talent, especially in the secondary, which is Dwayne Akina's specialty. You have a brand new defensive line this year. Jacob Manu back in the linebacker position, along with Justin Flo. Your overall thoughts on the defense and just how it looks going into this season compared to the end of last year?
Yeah, I think you hit it on that head there, Shane, is that the defensive backfield should be strong. Tacario Davis, Trayton Stukes, Gunnar Maldonado. You mentioned the linebackers. The defensive line is probably, and it's no secret, the biggest question mark on the team. They lost that front there. They do have some guys that did play, but they lost too many starters there, and they lost size. That's the other half of it. Now, again, you look at the roster, and you look at the transfer portal and what they brought in, and I think I counted the other day 8 guys that, in my estimation, could play. Now, I'm not a coach, so I'm not a good evaluator of talent, but they're going to need some guys there, and they may play a lot of guys on the defensive line, in particular early on the season, because they're going to have to find 3 or 4 really good ones up there. And like I said, that's going to be a major thing to watch. First 2 games in particular, just to see how that unit gels. And then when you get to Kansas State on September 13th, that will be the first big test for those guys.
Agreed. At K-State at Utah is going to be a tough 2-game stretch. Last question for you, Brian. I feel like, as much as I would love for the Pac-12 to just stay together and not move on, I do think that this is a good opportunity for Arizona football specifically to sort of rebrand itself. You got a new conference, a new head coach, and that label of maybe being, just flat out bad or below average football program. I think there's an opportunity now to kind of reintroduce yourself to the country into a new market. And it's a good time to do it from my perspective, because you're coming off a good season with a new head coach, but a lot of players coming back as well. What are your overall thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you guys. I mean, it was sad. The first college football game I ever saw, I think my dad took me to Husky Stadium in Seattle when I was probably 8 years old. And so I've been around the conference really since I was born. And to see it go away, it's very sad. But let's look at it this way. We didn't have a choice. Unless you guys were in on this, I don't know. I didn't have a vote in it, but we didn't have a choice. Here we are, teams in the Big 12. And so embrace it, enjoy it. And yeah, I think a new brand is probably a great way to look at it. It's allowed, Coach Brennan and his staff to up their recruiting in the Midwest, Texas in particular, where there's so much talent, because now you're going to play in Texas every season, and Texas teams are going to come here. And so you've got to take advantage of what's given to you. And like I said before, you trade Oregon and USC for Kansas State, I don't know who else, BYU, or West Virginia, and maybe those programs are on the a level Arizona's at right now. And whoever in this new conference now, there's going to be some teams that are going to take advantage of this opportunity, because I bet you the remaining teams out of the Big 12 are thinking the same thing. Hey, we got rid of Texas and Oklahoma, and now it's our time. And so I think it's kind of exciting here to see how all these teams in the conference, and the programs in particular, over the next couple of years build themselves, and who's going to be the front runners now in the Big 12. I don't think we're going to know that for a couple of seasons, but it's just another, I think, exciting part of what's lying ahead here for all of us.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. But I guess there is, as Shane and I talked about earlier in the show, we're missing that allure of the USCs and the Oregons and the UCLAs on your schedule, but nothing we can do about that for now. All right, last question for you, Brian. Always appreciate having you on. The last 2 times we've had you on, I've asked you a Ray Scott question since he was your mentor. I want to ask you another one here about broadcasting style. When you're calling a game, what do you do that you learned from Ray Scott, and what advice would you have for other play-by-play broadcasters such as your son Brody, who's done a great job?
Keep it simple. Just keep in mind that everybody listening to you doesn't know everything about the sport you're broadcasting. And so if you try and get too complex, too complicated, you don't want to go on the air like, hey, I know everything about football, and I'm going to tell you everything I know about football. Just keep in mind who your listeners are, and keep it simple. That was probably one of the best things that he told me, because if you get too fancy with it, you start losing people, and then you lose your job. So, yeah, that's just one of the many things that Ray passed along, and I've tried to stay with that. My job is to paint the picture, and then in football, Lamont Lovett, the former running back at Arizona, who is back again this year. I think this will be either his 19th or 20th season with me. He's the guy that gets to put the flavor in there, and that's why he's good at that. So we really work well together because we know our roles, and that's my role, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, we actually had Lamont on the show last week. And I asked him, one thing that we've never discussed in the times that we've had him on were his reactions when you have a touchdown Arizona call. And he kind of has this giggle or an enthusiasm about it, which is something different. You don't hear that in a lot of broadcasts.
Yeah. I have never told Lamont what to do on the air. I think when he first started, I gave him the basics. Here's a good time to come in, and you learn each other's cadence. And that took a few games, but I've never given him any advice because, I don't want to. I want him to be himself. I think that's really important, and he is himself. And that's why he's been with us for so long. And, he played at Arizona. So, there's that red and blue blood flowing through him, and that's okay. I mean, it's not an us, we, I kind of thing. It's just, he understands that we have to, keep some, keep an arm's length there. We're not homers, but I think everybody that listens knows that, we're broadcasting the Wildcats. We favor them. We want them to win. We're happy when they win. We're sad when they lose. And I think it comes out with Lamont. And believe me, he beats himself up if they lose. I mean, I'm laughing, but I just, I remember after games when they've lost, and he's just he goes into deep depression like right away. And so if it's a road game, we get on the plane, and usually they have ice cream bars at some point, and that snaps him out of it. But until then, he wears that loss.
Brian, I just got to ask, do you enjoy this job as much as you did when you started? Because I think you've been the play-by-play guy at Arizona for almost 40 years now. Do you love it as much as you did when you started this whole career?
Yeah, I do. Even the people ask me about the travel and everything, but we're blessed here with the fact that we're able to charter for football and basketball, and we don't make that many baseball trips. So the travel, it's very easy, and they make the hotel reservations for you. You walk in, they hand you a key, you're in your room, and you're on the bus back and forth to the game, and so it helps a lot. And there's challenges along the line. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys that come baseball season, it's probably about midway through baseball season, I start to hit the wall because I've been going for about 7 months nonstop. But then I love baseball so much, and to me it's kind of a soothing sport to call that I don't look forward to it ending, but I also look forward to having some time off over the summer. So yeah, I think about that once in a while. I said, well, my wife asked me, she says, well, how long do you want to keep doing this? And I said, well, you tell me. He said, if I'm not doing a good job, and she's a very critical listener, by the way, then that's the time to find something else. So as long as I'm healthy and can do it, I'll keep doing it. And as long as they keep paying me, I'll keep doing it.
Well, we look forward to hearing you for hopefully the next 10 months when your baseball season concludes in Omaha. Long way to go, but we'll definitely be listening. I'll be listening on the way home from Tucson from the football game on August 31st. Brian, as always, great chatting with you, and I'm sure we'll talk to you in the next few months as per usual.
Great. Always a pleasure, guys. Keep up the good work, and we'll see you here soon.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
One of the great things about doing the show, Shane, is the fact that when we have some of our guests on, we'll talk to them off the air about different things. And after we got off with Brian, just kind of reflecting, you had asked about how long he's been doing Arizona games, and he mentioned that the first game that he covered was on the sidelines, 1980. Was Larry Smith's first game, and then the first game he did play-by-play was Larry Smith's final game, the Aloha Bowl in 1986.
Fitting.
We were talking about, fitting. And then we talked about some other things. I have a friend who's a former USC quarterback back in 1981 when Arizona beat them in the Coliseum. I asked my buddy when I was in Del Mar at the horse track the other week about it. He was not very happy answering that question. Kind of a bitter memory, and mentioned that the field had been very sloppy, terrible conditions because of a Rolling Stones concert. Brian said from his memory, field wasn't so bad. Perception is everything, but it's fun to get the inside story from somebody who lived it.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating stuff. And I mentioned to Brian after we were done recording our interview that at some point we got to talk about the streak and how much fun he must have had calling those games, because he called at least a few of them. I mean, he's been part of the Arizona, covering Arizona since 1980, so he was there for all of them. But I think he's been the voice since '86. So he actually called some of those games, including the first one would have been the one with the Chuck Cecil pick six. So I think getting his perspective on those would be a lot of fun. But no, he's got a great career, and he's stuck with the program through thick and thin, just like you have, just like you've been, had season tickets.
Different animal, Brian Jeffries and me, clearly. But
I
yes.
understand, but still, I mean, you've stuck with the program through thick and thin, and traveled 2 hours each way to watch a crappy team a lot of times, and you're finally getting rewarded for that. And Brian Jeffries has stuck through a lot of bad seasons, football, basketball, baseball, and he loves what he does. And I am envious of anyone who finds a job that they love and is able to do it for as long as Brian Jeffries has.
Brian gets paid for it. I don't. I actually pay them to go watch the game. But
I do
yes,
understand the difference. I'm trying to give you a little
yes.
bit of credit, Eric. Why don't you
Thank
just
you.
take it?
Yes. Thank you. Yes, thank you. And you know what, Shane? You know what I also enjoy doing? Being a part of the show. We've done this now. We're pretty much at the 4th anniversary of this program.
Yeah.
Of when we started. And I hope we can go as long as we can, because it's just an absolute blast. Before we get into this final segment, just want to say how much I enjoy doing this. It's as fun as it is, as it's fun as a passion project for you and I. It's also therapeutic at times, and we've really been able to talk to some great people. And here's to many more as we continue on. So just
yeah,
want to point
and this I believe I have to check when I upload the episode, but I believe this is episode number 220 for us.
Wow.
So that would be over 4 years worth of episodes, including some bonus ones, some live streams we've done along the way to celebrate wins and also to commiserate some very tough losses, especially in that first year or so that we were doing this.
Yeah, our first show was actually on 8/19, so the anniversary will be next week, but this is our 4th full year that we've been able to do this, 220 episodes. Wild. All right, no pun intended.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about a few more things. Not going to do memories from a team a year. We covered that this summer, but let's talk about a few things around the conference, around the Big 12. Kyle Whittingham, coach of Utah, came out the other day and said he expects major realignment, including a 16-team playoffs and a 40 to 60 school super conference in the next several years. If this is true, number one, will Arizona be a part of that super conference? Number two, do you like a 16-team playoff? And number three, and we can just touch on these as you talk.
Yeah.
Are you okay with there being the haves and the have-nots separated in college football going forward?
I'll just start with the 16-team playoff. I feel like even 12 is too many. Now I'll probably change my tune if Arizona sneaks in, but I feel like 8 is probably the sweet spot. So I don't know if 16 is really necessary. I feel like, especially in college football, you really only have 3, maybe 4 teams tops who are really contending for the national championship every year. And I think that's going to be reflected in this year's college football playoff. So we'll see. If it got from 12 to 16, maybe not a big deal, but I don't really think it needs to be expanded anymore. I think Arizona will probably hitch a ride wherever this ends up going. I don't like it, but it seems like it's inevitable. He mentioned that college football is essentially becoming the NFL's minor league, which I feel like it kind of already is now that players are getting paid. The only difference is college teams don't have the pro football affiliates, at least for now. But I can't imagine. This is something I mentioned in the podcast I was on the other day with the Texas Tech guy. I can't imagine the Big 12 is going to look the way it does now for more than another year or two. And it's easy to see a scenario where it ultimately gets absorbed by another conference or conferences, just like the Pac-12 got absorbed by 3 different conferences. Even when that happens, I will say, and I think Arizona's going to be fine, at least in terms of football. And hope winning, I think will take care of that. I think that obviously makes the program look more desirable. But even when that happens, when the conferences continue to consolidate, one thing I'd like to see is the redistribution of other programs into regional conferences. Like maybe basketball comes along for the ride with football, but for programs like golf and tennis and volleyball, is it really necessary? Wouldn't it be more financially feasible and sustainable to go back to regional conferences? I used the example of beach volleyball. I know it's kind of an obscure sport, but still 3 of the best teams in the country are Arizona, GCU, and ASU. And then you got UCLA and USC next door. You got a 5-team pod right there. Maybe add a couple more SoCal schools if that makes sense, and have them play each other throughout the season until it's time for the national tournament. Same with a lot of the other non-revenue sports. You could do the same thing. I think that makes a lot of sense, which is probably why it won't happen. But I just don't see the need to bring every single program along for what is essentially just a realignment process taking place specifically because of college football. I do think that Whittingham's right. I think this is the direction we're going. I'm not thrilled about it. I think Arizona will be fine, but I'm not thrilled about it, and I hope that it is exclusive to football and maybe basketball.
If it is a 40-team super conference, Arizona will be out. If it is a 60-team super conference, Arizona will be in. Simple as that. They are between 41 and 60 in terms of perception. They are. Maybe. I mean, And I think we're going to see the haves and the have-nots, and I understand that. I think some of these smaller schools, maybe in lesser competitor, the lesser conferences, not the Power Four, deserve to be competing for a separate kind of national championship, just like we see in FCS.
Would you say it's fair that Arizona may be playing in football the next couple of years for
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
Talking
Yeah.
about rebranding and reinventing yourselves, this is their opportunity to do it, and maybe it'll be out of necessity. It's just a crazy thought, but you could be right about that.
A top 25 finish, I think, is paramount this season, especially. If you have back-to-back where you were number 11 last year, and if you finish in the top 25 again this year, I think it's really, really important if you're going to put together a super conference to say you can't leave out a team that has had flashes of being really successful and is, a power basketball program as well. It's just kind of my take on that. I don't like the 16-team playoff whatsoever. I think 12 is the max. The fact that a team can win the national championship this year and play 17 games seems excessive. Now, I love all the college football that we can get, but I think there has to be kind of a limit for these kids. They also are in school, remember? I know they're being paid, but their purpose is to go to school and get an education. Listen, I'm as big a college football guy as anybody, but there has to be some kind of a balance. It shouldn't be like the NFL where a regular season, is 17 games. Now you're going to see that for the winning team in college football, 16 or 17.
Yeah. Well, another question too, and I think you're going to see this, that it's going to start to be answered this year is, how many guys are going to sit out these games? The guys who are on maybe the number 10 or 11 or 12 seed, who maybe they're thinking we don't really have a realistic chance to play for national championship. I'm going to sit out and save my draft stock. We've seen guys sit out pretty big, not necessarily college football playoff games, but now that it's expanded to 12, is there a possibility we're going to start seeing that as well? And is it going to be a true, national championship tournament in that regard? Because you add 2 or 3 games to your calendar, that from those kids' perspective, it's 2 or 3 more games, and they have a chance to get hurt and possibly miss out on a lot more money than they're making in NIL. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
The other thing I want to talk about, Shane, is Deion Sanders. Came out last week and was really a jerk. Not answering a local CBS reporter's question, because on CBS Sports, they ranked him the second worst coach in the conference. Considering he hasn't proven anything. I mean, he was a fantastic football player in college and pro, but as a coach, he's proven nothing. You proved nothing at Jackson State. And then, okay, you won a few games, great, because you were able to recruit Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders there. And then you get to Colorado and you can't even make a bowl game. And you're probably not going to this year. What his antics to me are so disgusting. And I believe that the sport will be better when Deion Sanders is not a head coach in it.
Wait, but you know what? You know who loves all of Deion's ridiculousness? The NCAA and the Big 12 do, because it is incredible publicity. Because Colorado, if you consider, they were only 4-8 last year. But even with that, they've gone from a football program that was an afterthought in the college football world to a team that invokes one of the biggest emotional responses from fans, whether they play Colorado or not, whether they're in the same conference as Colorado or not. Some fans love it. They're all aboard the prime train, whether they love Deion Sanders or just love the chaos. And others can't wait for them to fail. We're talking about them right now for that reason. But regardless of how you feel about it, you definitely feel something. And that's invaluable from a marketing perspective. And the only thing I'll say is usually it's not uncommon, and I just noticed from my experience in the media, for certain teams, pro or college, to shun a news organization if someone has put out some unflattering coverage about them or just said things, even if they're factual, that aren't nice. I just know that from my time at ABC 15, there's at least one professional team locally that was, wouldn't give a coworker of mine an interview because you weren't nice to us last week. So the program, they can be that petty. Usually you don't see it from the head coach, though. So no, he's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's petty. But I guarantee you the Big 12 and the NCAA love it because it's great attention, both positive and negative. It's attention, and it's what they want.
I don't like it. And what I look forward to? When Deion leads, whether it's this year or next year, probably after this year, once Shedeur goes to the NFL, Colorado's going to stink. And I'm going to enjoy every second of it because their fans are obnoxious, thinking that they're entitled and they're almost, in my opinion, rivaling ASU fans in terms of obnoxiousness and UCLA basketball fans. They are, just from what I've seen on social media.
Could you imagine if he had become Arizona's head coach, do you think you might feel differently, or would you despise them as much as you do?
Well, I mean, the thing is how we knew that Jedd Fisch, if he was successful, would leave. Deion, even if he wasn't successful, was going to leave. So, I mean, that's kind of where I look at it. Like, we knew, the outcome before he started. The question is, how high can he take the team?
Yeah.
They're not going to, there's still so many holes on this team. He thought he could just come in there because of his name and win games. And they got off to a nice start and then got crushed.
Yeah.
And they almost beat U of A last year and they didn't. And, we won on a field goal at the buzzer and great. And we're going to smoke them on homecoming. And Deion his one time in Tucson, I will put it this way. There is no way that Deion Sanders coaches multiple games in Tucson.
Yeah, and you could be right about that. I think the overall question, though, Eric, is, are villains good for sports? That's what you really have to ask, because, they're love them or hate them teams, love them or hate them players. And now Colorado all of a sudden is a love them or hate them football program, specifically because of Deion Sanders. And no, I don't like it. I think he's acting like a child, but I also can appreciate the added flair now, the added flavor that we have going into the college football season because of his ridiculousness.
I can't wait to pick against Colorado as much as I can and watch Deion whine and not talk to more members of the media. The question is, will he talk to more members at the end of the season than he doesn't? In local media members.
If he keeps losing, he's not going to have anyone to talk to except his son. So,
will be interesting times. Next week, Shane and I make informed college football predictions. But thanks to Brian Jeffries for joining us. Always great to catch up with him. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. As always, thanks for listening and bear down.